Hello Aries, and welcome to your full moon reading for March 2023, and this is for Aries sun sign or rising sign. I'm actually feeling called to this one already. So these are short and quick readings for when I do full moon and new moon readings. So we're just getting a sense of like what themes are coming up and what spiritual advice is coming through to assist you with this. Right, so interestingly enough, we currently have, okay, interesting. So, so interestingly enough, we currently have, well, at least at the time of this recording, Chiron and Venus and Jupiter are all very close to each other and hanging out. So it's interesting that we have Chiron showing up in the very beginning of this. So these are the themes, right? Chiron has to do with healing, and I think that it's pretty well known that Chiron can be called the wounded healer, but it's like, that's so limiting. It's a place where we alchemize our wounding, where we see the value in it and we integrate it, and therefore come through that able to either through being of service, like through offering service or being of service to the collective and other people, or through just our example of living our life, are able to offer this wisdom to like be able to be messengers and teachers of this alchemization process that we've gone through. That said, while that sounds really lovely and positive, that alchemy process is not always comfortable, just like transformation is not always comfortable. And so that means that there are pain points that are getting stirred up at this time. So the full moon, shortly after the full moon, we have a really big transit happening in the skies, right? We have Saturn moving into a new sign. And for you, depending on your chart, will likely be moving into a different house as well, meaning a different part of life. And so for you, Aries, this is stimulating, like stirring the pot and stimulating, kind of like picking at scabs, it's opening the wounds a little bit. It's prodding them and poking at them. And so this is what's coming up. It's interesting because the spiritual advice here, I know that the tower looks insanely scary to people. Most people are just like, they don't want to have the tower ever show up in their readings. I get it. It's uncomfortable. However, the tower in a position of advice is basically here to say, look, let go. Allow this to dissipate. Allow yourself to move through this process and to allow things to just move through. The time where we actually struggle the most when it comes to the Tower card is when we are holding on and resisting the change and the shift that needs to happen. Basically, the Tower card comes in to say, hey, like the foundation that you were building on was shaky and unstable. The framework that you were building was not going to be able to stand against like the weather and the storms of life. It was shaky at best, and it wasn't going to be a stable structure, a strong structure. So therefore we have to like start from scratch. We have to level everything, go back to the beginning, square one, go back to the drawing board and allow it to dissolve and dissipate and start anew, start freshly. And while it's easy to stand on the outside of that, like myself, and say, hey, this is it's an easier process. While it may be easier of a process when you are in a state of allowing and observing and moving, like pivoting and moving with the energy, that's not to say that it's easy. Of course, it's still uncomfortable. So, but through the discomfort, through the things that are coming up, and as you do this, as you take this advice, you actually move into a really beautiful space. Like the Ace of Cups shows up to give us renewed faith, renewed hope, renewed optimism. It's the waters running clear. It's a new beginning. It's fresh and clean and clear. And it's the emotions, right? It's our emotions and our energy. And so it's like you come into, it's almost like being reborn, being, you could say baptized, right? Like that's one way to put it, but being reborn in this way. So coming out fresh and new. So the clearing and the maybe some of the pain points and things that are coming up are meant to happen because it's it's a process that needs to happen so that you can move through that to this new beginning, to this really beautiful space. So just know, if that's helpful to know, that through the process, like through the pain and through the discomfort, like sometimes, I don't know, I feel like it's helpful to know there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and where I come out on the other side is actually going to be good. So just know that where you come out on the other side, it is beautiful and it is good. So trust the process. Just know that full moon to new moon, this is when we are releasing energy, right? It's definitely a time where we can be tying up loose ends and going inward. And so we're still, you know, depending on where you live in the world, if you live in the United States, and, you know, you could be going through still like the last little legs like of winter. And so there's this kind of still very inward process. So, you know, just move with the energy, pivot with the energy to the best of your ability. I know it may not necessarily feel comfortable. So if you want kind of like a bigger picture of like overall what's happening, I would check out the March Aries monthly reading, which I just put out a few days ago. So that's like fairly new, because very quickly after we had the beginning of this month, we have this full moon. So I would check that out next just to get a sense of that. And of course, if you want a personal reading, the information for that and all the links are down below. So I hope this was helpful. Thanks. Have a beautiful full moon.